Hi, welcome back. It's SL from Danalyser. If you are new here, I've been sharing Google Data Studio tutorials since last year on YouTube. And this year, in year 2022, I'm so happy to finally launch this Google Data Studio crash course for you. This course is for complete beginners that want to learn by examples, so there will be more practical exercises and less theory, but we'll make sure to cover the fundamentals in order for you to create your first Data Studio report. The dataset used in this course will also be attached in the description below so you can download it and follow along. So just to give you a little bit of teaser, this is the exact dashboard that you will be building throughout the entire course. So if you are interested, here is an overview of the entire course, what we're going to cover, what you're going to learn. In the first chapter, we're going to learn what exactly is Google Data Studio, and we'll answer some of the commonly asked questions. In the second chapter, we will learn how to connect to your data. In our course, we will focus on Google Sheets. So in the third chapter, we will be covering how you can create some basic charts in Data Studio, such as bar charts, pie charts, some table charts, and so on. And in the next chapter, we will go on deeper to learn some of the more advanced charts like time series chart and some map charts. Moving on, in the next chapter, we will learn about calculated fields, which are some of the formulas, but we'll cover only the simple ones to make sure you don't feel overwhelming. And in the next chapter, we're going to learn how to make your dashboard interactive, which includes how to add filters and how to make the chart interactive. So in the chapter 7, we're going to learn how to customize your report. That will be more on the styling, such as the background color, the chart color, the text font, and so on. So after you have customized the report and make sure it's good looking, we will then learn how to share it to your client or to your team. So if you are ready to take 1 or 2 hours of your time to join me in this crash course, do subscribe and ring the notification bell so you get notified when the next video is up. See you next time. Bye bye. Hi, it's SL from Danalyser. Welcome to the first chapter of Google Data Studio crash course. In this chapter, we will talk about what is Google Data Studio, and we'll cover some of the commonly asked questions regarding this tool, such as is Google Data Studio free to use, how to get started, and so on. So first question, what is Google Data Studio? It is actually a data visualization tool that can help you to connect to your data source, such as your Google Sheets, your Google Analytics, and so on. And then it can help you to visualize the data and finally share it across to your team or your clients easily with just one click. So what can we do with Google Data Studio? If you are a digital marketing agency, you may want to use GDS to create a web analytics dashboard that tracks all the important metrics that your clients want to see in the report. What's best about using GDS instead of spreadsheets is that the data updated automatically, so there will be no manual tracking needed. If you are managing a few clients, you can use back the same report template that you have developed for all the clients, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Next, if you are a business owner, you can use GDS to create a sales analytics dashboard that can help you to get insights on your sales so you can make informed decisions to grow your business. So this is what exactly we're going to develop in this crash course. We're going to do a sales analytics dashboard that analyzes your sales, the product insights, and when you filter from the filter, you can see all the data has been updated instantly based on the filter that you have selected. So from there, you can analyze the data and make the decision. Moving on, we'll go into the Q&A where we will answer some of the commonly asked questions regarding this tool. So first question, is there any prerequisite to create or view reports in GDS? So to view reports in GDS, we will need a web browser and internet because GDS is a cloud visualization tool. So everything is in the cloud. That means you will need to have internet to browse your report online. However, you don't need a Google account to view a report. So if your client is not using a Gmail, there's no problem with that. You can just share the link with them and they will be able to view it. However, in order to create or develop a GDS report, you will need a Google account. It's free, so you can get it. After you have get your Google account, just sign in, and after signing in, just go to datastudio.com and click the button use it for free, and you shall be good to go. Similarly, you will also need a web browser and internet because all the development is done on cloud. What's the pricing for GDS? It's completely free if you use native connector to connect your data. However, if you are using some third-party connectors like Supermetrics, 𝐤𝐤𝐤𝐤, they are paid services, which means they will be maintaining and developing the connector in order for you to connect to the data source that you want. So if there are any available native connector for your data source, you don't have to pay to use GDS for your reporting. Here are some of the examples for free of charge connectors such as Google Sheets, BigQuery, Google Ads, Google Analytics, and YouTube. So we'll cover in more detail where you can find this connector in the chapter 2. Next question, is Data Studio suitable for complete beginners? Yes, I think it's a great tool to get started in learning how to build a dashboard. Based on my personal experience, Data Studio is more straightforward and easy to learn as compared to some more advanced BI tools like Power BI and Tableau. If you're already familiar with Google Sheets or Excel, then I think this would be more easier for you to pick up. That's the last question of today. If you have any questions that I haven't covered, feel free to leave it in the comments below and I will make sure to read them and answer them as far as I can. Do like, comment, and subscribe to this channel if you like what I do here. So stay tuned for the next chapter where we'll get our hands dirty and start creating dashboard in Data Studio. See you next time. Bye bye. Hi, it's SL from Danalyser. Welcome back. So in this tutorial, we're going to cover how to connect to Google Sheets data using Data Connector. And we'll also learn some of the basics related to data source, such as the metrics and dimension, and also the refresh frequency. So if you come from the previous tutorial, I'm sure you have already got your Data Studio account. But if you are new here, if you want to get your Data Studio account, just go to datastudio.google.com and click use it for free. And then sign in from there using your Gmail. Once you sign in, you will see this landing page that I'm showing on my screen right now. So now I'm on my Data Studio landing page. So at the left hand side, we have a menu which shows us the recent reports that we have created, which is the default ones. And then we also have a tab to show the reports that people have shared with you. And here are some of the reports that owned by you. And lastly, in the bin tab, we can find all the reports that you have deleted previously. Moving on, at the bottom here, you can see there is a templates. So in the template gallery, we can find all the available ready-made templates that you can use right away, so you don't have to create a report from scratch. If you want to use it, you can just click on one of the templates and click use template to start from there. If you are interested in using templates for your reports, I do have a video that guide you on how to find a report template and how to use it. I'll just leave the link in the comments below. So that's about the templates. But for this tutorial, we're going to build a report from scratch. So for that purpose, let's create an empty report. Just go to the left menu and you can see this plus button, create over here. Just click on the create button. And in the pop-up, let's select report. And now we have a report created. And you can see right away that Google Data Studio has already prompted us to connect to a data. If you look right here, we can see these Google connectors These are all the connectors created by Data Studio, which is Google. These are all available for free. So in my last episode, I have introduced a few free connectors such as Google Analytics, Google Ads, Google Sheets, and here we actually have more than what I listed in the last video. So feel free to explore it. If you scroll a little bit down, you can see these partner connectors. So partner connectors are actually the third-party connectors. The examples are like Supermetrics, Windsor.ai, Funnel, and so on. So there are a lot of third-party connectors that allows you to connect to other data sources that Google doesn't have a native connector for. Since there are so many over here, you probably don't want to go one by one. So here is a search bar that you can just type in the data source that you want. So for example, I may want to connect to Facebook ads. So I'll just type Facebook over here, and here it will show me all the related data source connector for Facebook. So for example, I have Gladiator, I have Porter Metrics, and so on. So if you want to use that, just click on that and follow the instructions by each partner connector. Right now, since we want to connect to Google Sheets data, I'll just click on this Google Sheets. By the way, if you haven't downloaded the dataset that we shared in the last chapter, please download it now so that you can follow along. You can also use your own data if you have one. However, I do recommend you to use the same data source if this is the first time you're creating a report in Google Data Studio. So if you haven't already downloaded, just grab the link in the description below and you shall be able to follow along. So now let's get back to the report just now. If you have just downloaded it, you should be able to see it under all items. Just search for the spreadsheet, click on that, and under the worksheet, just select the tab data because this is where our raw data is. And here we'll just leave it in the default options. However, if you can't find the file over here, maybe you have too many spreadsheets, what you can do is to go to the sample data that you have just downloaded, go to the data tab and copy the URL. Just press Command C or Control C to copy, and then go back to here and go to the tab URL. Just paste the link over here. Also, one thing you need to take note of when you're importing Google Sheets data is that you need to make sure the first row is the header, the column header. So for my example, the first row is a column header. In case you are using your own file, if the first row is not the column header, you will want to delete the row above the column header and make it the first row. Alternatively, you can just define the range over here. So for example, if I test data dictionary, since it's on the third row, I'll just select data dictionary first, and then the optional I can put A3 to E16, A3 to E16. So when I click add and there's a prompt, just click add to report. And here I managed to import all my data. Since I wanted the data tab instead of the data dictionary, let me just switch it back. So to edit a data source, I'm going to go to resource and then manage edit data source. Under the actions, I'm going to click edit so I can edit the data source. And then I'll go to edit connection over here. Click on that. I'm just going to remove the optional range and go back to data. So now I'm going to click reconnect. So Data Studio will go on and refresh the entire connection. So now it actually detects that these fields are no longer there, and these are the new fields that we have in the new connection. So now let's click apply and click finish and close it. So here, because it's still using the previous field, I'm just going to close out so it don't show us the error. So usually once the data is connected, you will see a table being created randomly by Data Studio. So that means you can already start creating visualization in Data Studio. However, the best practice here is actually to always check the data type after you have connected to the data source. This is because a field's data type tells Data Studio what kinds of data they can expect when processing that field. So this will determine what kind of operations are allowed for these fields. Say for example, if I have a numeric field, I'm allowed to sum the entire column to give me a total number. However, if I have a text field, even though the values are all numbers, I still can't sum out because Data Studio already recognizes it as a text. They don't allow an arithmetic function to be applied to text. So that's what you need to take note of. And go back to our sample data. If you click on this edit data source, I can go to the data source edit tab. So from here I can see that buyer is recognized as text, which is correct. And I can go on and check for each ones. But here I just want to point out one specific example, which is transaction ID. In this case, it's recognized as number. However, transaction ID is actually not a number. It is a text. So to change that, I'm going to just click on this number and select text. After that, I can just click finish. And you will see now the transaction ID has changed from numeric to text. So now we have learned how to connect to Google Sheets data. Next, I will want to introduce you about metrics and dimension. In Data Studio, dimension refers to the labels that describe the metrics, or simply they are the data categories. Some of the examples are product names, customer names, and date. However, unaggregated numbers are also considered as dimension in Data Studio. So if I go back to Data Studio, you can see that even price, they are all numbers. Discount amount also a number, but they are still in green, meaning they are still a dimension. If we decided to aggregate it using calculated fields, it would then become a matrix. So with that in mind, let's understand what matrix is about. Metrics in Data Studio are referring to quantitative measurements of data. For example, the total revenues, total customers, total items sold are all considered as metrics. And they are always highlighted in blue so you can identify them easily. Another characteristic of a metric in Data Studio is they are always aggregated. So for example, let's say I want to sum up all the price. I can do this, just a simple formula, and I can just rename it to revenue. See, now I have created a revenue based on the column price. So now column price has been aggregated to become a total revenue, and in this case, it's a metric. So if we are referring to the column price, it's a dimension. And if we are referring to the aggregated number of price column, it would be a metric. So just a quick recap of everything we just mentioned just now. You can understand dimension as the text columns. That's for sure a dimension. Second, for the numeric, how you want to identify if they are a dimension or metric, it depends on whether they are aggregated or they haven't aggregated. So if they are being aggregated, they are metrics. If they are not, then they are still a dimension. So I hope that helps, and moving on, we're going to talk about the refresh frequency, which is a very important settings in Data Studio. So to configure our data source again, we will go to this data source and we will click edit. Here it actually has some extra settings on top. So this is the update frequency that I have been mentioning. This determines how quick Data Studio going to your underlying data source to grab the latest data and update in your report. So if you look closely, here it actually says if you have more frequent updates, it can actually give you fresher data, but it may potentially slow down the performance of your report. Meaning to say your reports will be slow when you're trying to load it. And also, one of the downside of increasing the frequency of the updates is that if you're using a paid data services like BigQuery, you may see an increase in the query cost. However, for Google Sheets, it's not a paid services, so we don't have to worry about the query cost. For Google Sheets, by default, it's refreshed every 15 minutes, meaning for every 15 minutes, Data Studio will go to Google Sheets and check if there's any fresh data. If there is, then they'll grab the data and update in your report. So for now, let's remain it as 15 minutes and close the window. That's all for today's tutorial, and before we end this tutorial, let's rename the report so it's easier for us to find it next time. And I'm going to call it
Sales Dashboard Sample for GDS course.
So if you like what I do here, do like, comment, and subscribe to this channel so it can reach more people. And that's all. See you next time. Bye bye. Hi, welcome back. It's SL from Danalyser. In today's episode, we will learn how to create some basic charts in Data Studio, such as pie charts, bar charts, table chart, and also the scorecards. So first of all, let's go to datastudio.google.com and look for the report that you created in the previous lesson. There are multiple ways that you can search for a report. I usually look for the table here if I am actively editing the report, so it will be sorted by last open, so it's easier to find the active report that I'm currently working on. So if you can't find the report under this table, you can go up here in the search bar, just type in the keyword of the report name. So for mine, I can key in sales dashboard, and I can already see it under here. So I can just click on this to open up the dashboard. So now we have opened our dashboard. In Data Studio, we have two different modes. One is the editor mode and one is the viewer mode. As a report editor, you get two different views. So right now we are actually in viewer mode, which you can see I can't really move the chart. If I were to edit this dashboard, I will need to go to this edit button and click on it. So now it will bring me to the edit window, which I can see all the toolbars and the property panel. So now I can move the charts. Next, if you look at this control panel on top, you can see there is a share button which allows you to share the access of this report with others. Say for example, you want to invite your coworkers to edit the same report, you can share the edit access to them. If you want to share it to your stakeholders to view the report that you created, you can share them the view access. It can all be done with this simple function over here, but you don't have to worry much because we'll cover in detail in the upcoming chapters. For now, just know that you can share the report easily with this function. So we also have a menu here, which you can use it to refresh the data of your connection. And you can also make a copy of the entire report. When we switch to view mode, you actually get an extra option here, which is the present, which you can use it to present the dashboard like a PowerPoint. So that's about the control panel. So in edit mode, you can see there's always a blank canvas in the middle of the window. Here's where you can insert a chart, a text, a picture, or even embed your Google Sheets or Google Slides in the same report. And then on top of it, you can see there's a toolbar where you can use it to add a different page to your report. And moving on, we also have a button that you can use it to add a data source to your report. You can also add a chart quickly via the toolbar over here, and some community visualizations, which we will not cover in this tutorial. And then we can also add a control, embed the report, add an image, a text, a line, a shape, and so on. And for now, I'll just delete the page first because we don't need it. At the right hand side, we always have a property panel that allows you to configure the settings for all the elements in Data Studio. Again, that will include the chart, the text, the shape, and many more. Different components, including the charts, will have slightly different settings in the property panel. But there are two main things that we need to configure in every chart. First is the data that we need to insert in the chart. And second, that's the style of the charts. That includes the labels, the color of the labels, or even the background of the chart. For now, let's start creating the charts because that's where we can explore the different settings available for our charts. And I think that will be less boring because we'll have some more hands-on activities in between. So first of all, we're going to create this pie charts here that shows the sales contribution by product. To add a chart, let's go back to our report. You can click on this Add a Chart button at the top of the window. Click on that and select the pie chart. Here you can find all kinds of charts that you can insert in Data Studio, but for our use case today, we'll just select, but for our example here, we'll just select pie chart, which is the first one under pie. So what you can do is you just click on this blank canvas and it will help you to add this pie chart. And as you can see here, Data Studio has randomly picked some available fields to create this pie chart for us. So now we will need to tell Data Studio what fields or what data we will want to show in this pie chart. To do that, we will go to the property panel on our right hand side. Here you can see that under the data tab, we have data source. This indicates the data source that this chart is going to use. And for this one, we already covered in the previous video where we learned how to connect to our Google Sheets data. So now we just leave it here. Moving on, we have this date range dimension. This helps Data Studio to understand what date field that we're going to use for the filtering. So in our current report, we have two date field. One is the sales date and one is the date that the customer made their payment. So for now, we will select the sales date, which is the default one. This is a very important concept that you will need to learn, especially if your data set contains more than one date field. If you want to explore more about the control filters, including the date range filter, we would cover it in our upcoming chapters. So for now, just know that there's one option here to select the date range dimension that you want to use. And moving on, we will need to include the dimension and also a metric. So if you are confused about what is dimension and what is metrics, definitely check out the previous chapter where we cover in detail what exactly is these two terms. So now, since our requirement here is to create a pie chart that shows sales contribution by product, we will need one field to represent the revenue and one field to represent the product. So in this case, product is our category, so we'll put it under the dimension. Let's look for the available fields that indicate our products. So in this case, it will be our SKU here. So what you can do is to click on it and drag it and drop it under the dimension. And for metric, we will need to choose one field that represents the revenue. Because as you can see here in the available fields, we can't really see the word revenue, right? So in this case, we will always refer to our data dictionary, which is over here. Click on the data dictionary. When you read here, you will know that the price here actually represents our revenue. So we'll go back to our dashboard and we will drag and drop the price column into the metric. So now Data Studio will aggregate this field by summing it in total to show it in the pie chart. To add on, there are multiple ways that you can indicate the dimension and metric for the pie chart. One is the drag and drop method that we just showed you, and the other is where you can just click on this dimension here and there will be some fields here available for you to choose. You can also search through the search bar here. Say I can type delivery and I will get all the related columns based on the column name. Same for the metric. You can also do the same like what we did for dimension. So now we have done our step 1, which is to add a pie chart and also indicate the dimension and metric we want to show in the pie chart. Next, we're going to customize the styling of this chart. If you look at this pie chart, you will realize that there are too many categories here in the pie chart. So for pie chart, we will usually want to keep the number of slices or category under or equal to 6. So in this case, it's already exceed 6. So what we can do in Data Studio is we have a simple setting to categorize the small category here into one big group. So what I can do is to click on this pie chart and go to the property panel again. This time we'll visit the style tab. Just click on that. And right under the pie chart section, we can already see that there's one mini pie chart icon here with 10 slices. This means that the maximum slices that we want to show in the pie chart is 10. So this is the default one, but we're going to change it to 5 now. So just notice when I change it to 5, the bigger category will change their name from the individual SKU to a big group called others. Oops. Okay. And yeah, this is very simple. However, you will also notice that once we change that to others, the last two slices P010, P018 and others are quite close, which makes our eyes slightly difficult to differentiate that there are two different categories over here. So as a report editor, now you will want to customize the color of this pie chart. So now we will go on to the color by section. So you can see there are 3 different options here. One is the single color, slice order, and the last one is the dimension values. So let's try the option one by one. Let's say if I click the single color, now Data Studio will choose one color, by default blue, and they will show the category colors in gradient. So the largest one will be the darkest and followed by the next category. You can come to here and select the color that you want. Say if I select the yellow color and it will follow the yellow gradient. So now I will just want to keep it in blue. And next I want to try out the slice order. So if I click on this, it will actually follow our theme color over here. So that is okay, but I will also want to try out the dimension values, which is the default ones that we have earlier. So this is the dimension values. Let's say I want to change the colors of others. I don't want it to be orange. I can click on this manage dimension value colors. And then I can search for others. So when I search for others, it will return me the value of others and they will return me the color. So now just click on this color here, the small box, and we will select one color. Let's say I can select the blue color over here, and then I can close it. So this is how you can customize the colors based on the value of the categories. But for our report, I still want to make it to the single color, and I'll leave it as the default because we will customize the color for the entire report in one shot in a separate chapters. So for now, I think this is good enough. Last but not least, we may want to make it smaller by dragging in the corner, or you can use the border line to adjust the size of the charts and drag it to the location that you want, so long it's within the canvas here. Hi, welcome back. In today's tutorial, we're going to learn how to create and customize a bar chart that looks like this. So to add a chart, can go to this add a chart button up here and select bar chart. So here we're going to select this horizontal bar chart and click on it to insert. However, I have some quick tips for you to create a chart much more faster and lesser clicks. So to do that, I'll just use the chart below here. So I can select this, just click on the chart and use the shortcut key Command-C or Control-C if you're using Windows. And use the same key Command-V to paste the chart. So now we have two similar charts over here. And what we can do is to go to the right hand side header, expand the header, and then here I can quickly switch it to bar chart. Just hit the bar chart icon and it will show the bar chart for me. This would save us some time because we already know that the dimension and the metric for the bar chart and the pie chart is going to be the same. So we don't have to start from the very first step. We can just copy and paste and we can customize the chart right away. So now I'm just going to remove this record count bar chart. Now we already have a bar chart. To improve this further, I will want to add an x-axis, which is the sales revenue. And then I will want to add a data label at every bars. So to do that, click on the bar chart and we're going to go to Style tab to customize the look of the chart. So here we can scroll to the bottom and look for x-axis. So now we can see this bottom x-axis section. Click on the show axis title. Here we got the price. Don't worry about the name of the x-axis. Next, remember we want to have a data labels. So now let's scroll up to the bar chart section and we're going to click this show data labels. And right away you will see these numbers appearing at the very end of the chart. If you're wondering what is this compact numbers means, it's actually helping us to shorten the numbers. So for example, now I can maybe temporarily change the SKU to country. So you can see if I click the compact numbers now, you can see this 1.4K previously was 1384, like the number is longer. Now we can shorten it to 1.4K only. So right now, I'm just going to remain it as the usual one, and let's change back to the SKU. Before we move on to the next step, make sure you remember to rename the x-axis title. So right now we are in the data tab. Scroll to the bottom and look for the metrics section. Click on this edit icon and let's rename it. So just type in the name of the column, and you can add a $sign at the end of the title so that people knows that what currency we are referring to in this report. And once we're done, just click on the canvas to close the window. The next step I'm going to do is to remove this legend up here. This is because we already have the labels for the x-axis that tells us that these bars refers to the sales revenue. So this legend is kind of redundant here. So to remove that, just click on the chart again, and then we're going to go to the same tab, which is style, and we are going to look for legend. So scroll down to the bottom, and here you can see 4 icons here that shows you the position of the legend, and we're going to select none. So now we are able to remove the legend. For the color of the chart, it's okay to remain it as blue now because we're going to customize it in the very end of this course. So right now, I'm just going to resize it and relocate to the position that I want. So far, we have learned how to create and customize a pie chart and a bar chart. However, sometimes we just want to have a quick glance into some of the business KPIs for a quick health check and also for benchmarking. So here's where we can utilize a chart called Scorecard to display all of our important KPIs in a dashboard. Again, this is some of the example scorecards that we're going to create later. We will have the sales revenue, average item price, total items sold, and also the total buyers. During the process of creating the scorecards, you will learn something bit by bit, so be sure to stay till the end. And we're going to have a small quiz for the scorecard, so you can check your knowledge at the end of this section. So let's start now. To insert a scorecard, similarly, just go to Add a Chart and find the scorecard section. Just click on the first one and hit on the canvas to add the chart. So right now, Data Studio has selected a random column, which is the record count. So in this case, to have a revenue scorecard, we are going to drag and drop the price into the metric column. And you will see that now Data Studio has selected an aggregated method, which is the sum for this metric. So that's how we can get a scorecard. Pretty simple, right? But before we proceed, let's rename this scorecard so that other people know what is this referring to. So we're going to just call it sales revenue, and then in the bracket, just key in dollar or any other symbol for your currency. Next, we're going to create a scorecard for average item price. So in that case, for the speed, we are going to use some shortcuts that I teach you earlier to create another scorecard. So right now I have 2 sales revenue. For average item price, we are going to use back the same column, which is price. But instead of using a sum, we are going to calculate the average. So in this case, just click on this edit button. And then under the aggregation, I'm going to choose average. So now you can see that the scorecard shows the average instead of the sum of the entire column. Now the last step is just to rename the column to average item price. And then the third scorecard we're going to cover here is the total items sold. So unlike the previous scorecards that we created, which we have a numeric fields, like price, it's a numeric field. Right now, for the total items sold, we don't have that. So what we have is the transaction ID that represents the unique transaction. So based on our understanding on the business or the dataset, we know that for each transaction, it represents one item sold. So in that case, say if we calculate how much transaction ID are there in this dataset, we can directly know that how many items has been sold during that period. So with that in mind, I'm going to go find the transaction ID and drag and drop it. Before we do that, just copy and paste a new one. And then I'm going to drag and drop the transaction ID into this metric. So right now you can see the CTD in front of the metric. This is actually stands for count distinct. So if I click on this edit button, I can see that the aggregation method is selected as count distinct. So this is what we want. We don't want to select count because in some cases where there is a duplicate in your dataset, you want to avoid counting the same transaction twice. So we'll always select count distinct. And then in the name, we're going to rename it to total item sold. Now we have 3 scorecards created, and I want to mention that all these can be created using the drag and drop method, which is what we have learned just now. But we have another method which is using calculated fields to create the metric and then drag and drop the metric into the placeholder here. However, in this episode, I want to keep it simple for you, so we will come to that later in this course. And for now, the last metric, which is the total customers, I want you to take this chance to practice your understanding. So now I want you to pause this video and try to create a scorecard that represents the total customers. And a quick hint here is that you can refer to the dataset data dictionary if you are in doubt on the data understanding part. Welcome back. Now I assume that you have done the quiz and I will just review the answers. To do that, we can just copy and paste the same scorecard. And I'm going to look for the buyer ID, which is this buyer column, and drag it to the metric. So here you go. Did you manage to get the answer? If you do, leave a comment below to let us know. However, if you can't follow, do leave us in the comments below what's your mistakes and let's learn together. Last but not least, we're going to learn how to insert a table chart that looks like this. So to add a chart, just go to add a chart button and then we're going to select the very first table. Hit on the canvas to add the chart. So now we have a table here. The next step is to select the fields that we need in this table. So we're going to need the coupon code. And since it's a dimension, we are going to drag and drop it under the dimension here. So what I will do is I will just put it on top of the current fields so it will replace it. And then for the metric, we are going to need a price, which is already there. So I'll just leave it. And then I'm going to need a discount amount. So drag and drop this. And we are going to need a total buyer. So right now you can see that some of the texts are being cut off. For example, the opening sale ... and then we also can see some header being cut off. So in this case, I'm going to just resize the table. And it doesn't solve the issue entirely. So to do that, I will just manually move the vertical border to the right a little bit. However, my common practice is to right click and choose resize column and distribute evenly. So then the column width will be distributed evenly across every columns. I prefer this more because when I need to resize the table, the size of the column stays even, so I don't have to do the manual movement or adjustment for the column width anymore. Besides, another common practice of preventing a text being cut off in a table is to change the formatting. So right now, I'll just select this table and go to Style tab at the right, and I'm going to change the formatting for the table header to become wrap text. So then now when I move the table into smaller, the table header will be adjusted and it will be moved to the next row. Same for the table body. I'm going to change it to wrap text. So now you can see that opening sale has shown fully. This is before we make the changes, and this is after we wrap the text. So now you don't have to worry about text being cut off when you need to resize the table. Next, in GDS, the order of the column in a table follow the sequence in the dimension and matrix. So to check that out, I will just go to Data tab. And you can see that the table follows the sequence of dimension first, which is coupon code, and then move down to price, discount amount, and also the buyer. So if you want to reorder the columns, you can just move it up and drop it over there. So this is how you can rearrange the column. For now, I'm good with this sequence, so I'll just remain it as it is. Next, I'm going to talk about the sorting. If you notice in this table, you can see this small triangle pointing down. That means this table is being sorted by the column price, and it's sorted in a descending order. So if we want to change the column, we can always go to the Data tab, and then you scroll down to the Sort section, and here you can see the column. You can click on it to change to discount amount if you want. But for now, let's choose the price first. And you can sort it by ascending or descending. So it's really up to you and the business requirements. Next, we can see that there's a secondary sort function over here that you can configure. So similarly, you can just add the next column to sort if you want. But for now, we'll just leave it as blank. And before we move on further, let's rename the column first. For the price, I'm going to rename it to sales revenue.
And for discount amount, let's name it as discount amount and put $sign. And for buyer, just put total buyer.
I think we are all good here. Moving on, you can further customize this table by changing the format of the values inside the table. Say for example, we can see that the discount amount, there are some values that has decimals and some does not have. So to make it standardized and easier for us to read, we can make the entire field to appear as 1 decimal points. So to do that, I'll just go to Style again and scroll down until you find the metric section. And here is where we can customize each column in our tables. In this section, we can see that the column name is not stated over here. However, we do have a numbering that allows us to identify which corresponding fields that we're referring to. Say for example, column number 1 in the matrix will correspond to sales revenue. Say for example, if I change the decimal points for this column, you can see that it will appear in the first metric. So now I'll just set it to auto again. And what we want to change is the discount amount. So now let's move on to the number 2 column. And I will change the decimal precisions to 1. So now it's being standardized to 1 decimal points. Other than the decimal points, we can also align the text. Say for example, I will want to align all the metrics to left hand side. I can just do this. Or I can make it to center if I want, or right. So now let's move it to left hand side first. There's also a simple setting over here, which is compact numbers. So this basically helps you to convert this full number into a shortened form of number. Say for example, if I click compact number, you can see that the sales revenue has been rounded up to 1.7K instead of showing at the full number 1674. This is very useful if you just want the higher level numbers instead of the very exact accurate numbers. Now we have almost done with our table here, but you will notice that there is a difference between this that we just created and the above table. So basically in Data Studio, we can convert a table from this format to a table with bar charts, like a very mini bar charts within the table. So to do that, it's super easy. Just go to the matrix section again, and for the number, we are going to change it to heat map first, just to show you the example. So if I change it to heat map, say now if we want to change it to bar charts, we can change it to bar/pub, and we can select show number if you want the numbers to appear in front of the bar. Same for other columns, we just do the same thing. And you will probably wonder what is this yellow lines, right? This is actually the target lines, which you can just add easily here. Just click on the show target. And here you can define what is your target value. Say if it's 10, then the line will appear at this. Say, for example, if your marketing campaign, the target is to have at least 10 buyers, then from here you can easily see that which campaign fall below the target and which is exceeding the target. So that's just one sample usage of the target line. You can use it for other use case if you like. In overall, I think adding a bar chart or heat map in a table chart allows our audience to have better visual cues, especially when they are comparing different KPIs within the same table. That's all for today. If you like today's chart tutorial, I'm sure you will like our next one, which will cover the more advanced charts like time series chart and map charts. So be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll get notified next time when the video is up. See you next time. Bye bye. Hi, welcome back. In today's video, we will learn about how to create time series chart and draw chart in Google Data Studio. So time series charts is very useful for us to visualize daily, monthly, quarterly, or yearly data. For draw chart, it's important for us to show the geographical distribution of your sales or buyers. So it's also known as a sales map. So now let's get started with the time series chart. First of all, let's go add a chart. On top of the menu, click add the chart and let's look for the time series chart. We will select the first one and click to add. Now I'm going to resize a little bit. And here you can see that Data Studio has selected the random data, which is the sales date, and also the metric as the total buyers. So since we wanted a monthly sales trend, I'm going to first change the metrics to the total sales, which in this case will use the price to derive the total sales revenue. So just drag and drop it, and you can see that Data Studio will sum up the price field to derive the total sales revenue. So now just rename the field. So for the x-axis, right now it's aggregated at daily level. So we wanted it to be a monthly sales trend, right? So it's going to be a monthly aggregation. So let's go to dimension here at the right hand side. Sorry, I just forgot to make it bigger. Okay, at the right hand side, we are going to go to the dimension and click on this icon over here, and then under the type, you can see that it's now set as date by default. So we are going to click on this drop down. So here you can see there's a wide selection of the date aggregation for you to choose. We have date, date time, year, year quarter, year month, ISO year week, the date hour minute, and many more. So right now, since we wanted a monthly sales trend, I'm going to just select year month. Now you can see that the sales revenue has been aggregated to months. So now we have our time series chart done in a few minutes. Next, we are going to learn how to customize the look of this time series chart. So first of all, let's try to turn this line chart to a bar chart. So right now, the style is in line. We're going to change it to bar. So to change the style of a chart, same thing, we're going to go to the Style tab on the Property panel, and we're going to select bars instead of line. So right now you can see the chart has been turned into a bar chart in a second. I know many of you might be asking what's the difference of using this versus a bar chart. So if you are using a time series chart, the x-axis label, which is the date, will follow the ascending order or descending order depending on your setting. However, if you are using a bar chart, the order of the date might be messed up. It's always a good practice to use a time series chart if you want to visualize date-related metrics. Data Studio has made it very easy for us to switch it between line chart and bar chart for the time series. If we choose line chart, we can explore more customization options for line chart. For example, I can add the markers to this line chart by just clicking on this show points. So we will see a marker now added into the line chart. Not only that, we can also add a reference lines for different purposes. Say for example, to add a line, we can click on this add a reference line here. And right away you can see this opens up more settings here. For example, there's a type here where you can configure whether you want it to be constant value, metric, or a parameter. So for now, I will want to have a line to represent the average sales revenue so that I can know which month is performing better than the average and which month is underperformed. So right now in the type field, instead of the constant value, we are going to select metric. And now for the metric, it has been selected as the sales revenue. And then for the calculation, it's at the average. We can also set it to other aggregation methods such as the median, percentile, mean, max, or the total. So for now, I wanted to have the average, so we just remain it. And for the label, we will just remain as average, or we can rename it to average sales, like this. So next, we can also customize the look of this line and the label. For example, I can change the color to maybe yellow. So that's how you can add a reference line in Data Studio. Other than that, we can also add a constant value. Say for example, if you want to remind your sales team that this is the target that they should meet every month, you can set a reference line. Let's just do it together. So I can add a reference line, and then at the value, we will key in maybe 500. So we can see this is the bonus. We can even change the color to green, and then change the line from dash to dotted. So I hope that is useful for you. Next, we're going to learn about the jaw chart. So to create a jaw chart, we will go to add a chart, and scroll down to 𝐤𝐻 chart section and click on this icon and add it to our canvas. So right now we already have a 𝐤𝐻 chart generated for us because Data Studio will detect the 𝐤 dimension in our dataset and pull it into the chart automatically. So right now what we can do is to go to this data property panel to check if the data that Data Studio has choose for us is correct. So right now we can see that the 𝐤 dimension has been set to delivery country, which is correct. And then the metric has been set to price, which is also correct. So we just leave it as it is. In case your dataset doesn't have the 𝐤 dimension set up, how you can check and configure is to click on this Edit Data Source button. And it will bring you to your dataset. So here's where you can change the delivery country data type from text to country. So just select the 𝐤 and then look for country. There are also other type of 𝐤 dimension available here, so you can choose whatever that corresponds to your data. So after you have done with that, just click finished and you can drag in the correct column into the 𝐤 dimension. So the advantage of using this 𝐤 chart is that it has this zoom area that you could use. So right now it's zoomed to the world, which is the default one. If let's say we click on this drop down, we can actually set it to the continent or subcontinent. Other than the country, we can also visualize the map using the 𝐤 latitude and longitude, which I have already covered in a separate video. So if you're interested in learning that, I'll leave the links in the comments below. And for now, that's all for today's tutorial. And stay tuned for the next chapter where we'll talk about more advanced stuff like the calculated fields, but I guess it's going to be a simple calculated formulas. And that's all for today. See you next time. Bye bye. Hi, welcome back to the course. In this tutorial, we'll learn about calculated fields and how to create one in Google Data Studio. Calculated fields is very powerful in Data Studio. It allows us to perform maths calculation, data transformation, and also the logic evaluation. To give you more ideas, here are some of the examples you can do with calculated fields. For example, for a maths category, we can do addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication with the numerics field. And then for data transformation, we can convert a text from small letter to capital letter or vice versa. And then we can extract part of a text or we can add a prefix to a text. For the logic part, we can check if a specific condition is being met and return the corresponding value. So for example, imagine if we are developing a student dashboard, we will want to check if a student passed a certain marks, we will want to mark the student as top performer. So without further ado, let's get started with the tutorial. So in this tutorial, I'm going to cover the first two scenarios, which is the mathematics calculation and data transformation. So first of all, we would like to create a scorecard to calculate the revenue after discount. So we basically take price and subtract the discount amount. Once we know the formula, we can proceed to create the field. So to create a field, we'll go to the bottom right at the property panel and click add a field. So here we have an editing window for adding a calculated field. So we have field name here. So I'm going to type in revenue after discount. And then we have a field ID, which we normally won't edit it. For the formula, we can key in our formula, which is the price minus discount amount. So what I can do here is to type in the field name, or I can select the one that's being suggested to me if that's the right one, Or I can go to the available fields at the left hand side to just select the price and minus the discount amount. So choose whichever way that you feel comfortable with. Once you have completed the formula, remember to wait until you see the green tick at the bottom. So what's happening is the formula will be checked in real time once you have done it for any issues, and the red warnings will be shown if something is not right. So for example, just for the sake of demonstration, I can add this SKU into the formula, and Data Studio will check if this is the correct formula. If it's not, then they will throw me an error down there with an error message. So the reason I bring this up is because if the formula is incorrect, even though you can click finish over here at the top right, the field would not be created and you will lose the formula that you have entered. So watch out on that. Now let's remove this SKU and see if we got the green tick here. So now we see the green tick appearing at the bottom. Then we can click save and finished. So now you should see the new field being created and showing up in the available fields. And when you hover on the revenue after discount, you can see this FX icon at the left hand side, which we don't get at the usual fields. So this is an indicator of this particular column. It's a calculated dimension. So if you click on this FX icon, it will bring you back to the editing window we had earlier. So that's how you can edit the formula again once you have created the calculated field. By the way, if you haven't seen the calculated field after you have created it, you can try to refresh the browser. That works for me most of the time. After creating the calculator field, the next step is actually to verify if the formula is correct or if the formula is working. So this step is also known as data validation. To do that, we can create a table quickly to verify that. So now I'll create a separate page to do that, and then I can quickly add the chart and drag in the revenue after discount along with the transaction ID, the price, and also the discount amount. Then I'll add a total at the bottom by adding the option summary row. So here, I will sort by the discount amount because what's showing now doesn't have the discount amount, so I can't really check it. To check it, I'll sort it by the discount amount. And now you can see that if we take 35 minus 8.75, we will get 26.25. So it's correct. And if we take the summary row, which is the total of everything, 2068 minus 93.5, you will get 1974.5. So the calculation is correct. On a side note, in a real working scenario, whenever we find any data discrepancies, we will always check the data from the highest level. For example, by year, then look into month. This is to investigate if the discrepancies happen during a specific period or under specific condition. However, usually I will start with the raw data first. If the raw data doesn't match, I will go from the highest to the lowest level to check where is the discrepancies at. So I hope that helps you. Next, we're going to learn how to sum a column vertically using a calculated field. So what we did earlier was using price to minus discount, and we will get revenue after discount. So that's by each row. The next one we're going to do is by vertically summing up a column. So what I'm going to do now similarly is to add a field and key in the field name for the sales revenue. And then in the formula, I'll use the formula sum. And in the bracket, I'll just type in price because that's our revenue. And we will wait for the green tick to appear and click save and finished. Now I have a sales revenue metric that I can just drag it to create a scorecard. So earlier in our previous chart tutorial, I mentioned that other than the drag and drop method, you can use the calculated field to create a metric. So this is how we do it. And the advantage of it is that, let's say if I need this column in this table as well, I can just drag it and put it over here, and it will have the same column name throughout every chart, so we don't have to keep renaming price to sales revenue in that case. This can save us time from doing the labeling repetitively. Last but not least, we will learn how to transform a text in Data Studio using calculated fields. So if we go back to our dashboard, so in our coupon code table here, we actually see that the code Cyber Sale 2021 is being split into two rows. So we have one in the second row and another one in the fifth row. But in fact, they are actually referring to the same promotional campaigns. So this makes it difficult for the users to see which campaign actually performs better. The reason for this to happen is because Data Studio is case sensitive. It is simply not smart enough to detect that these two values refers to the same campaign. So to ensure that the data are being categorized as one single value, we can then standardize the letter case to all capital using the formula upper. So same as our previous steps, we're going to create a field and we're going to name it as promo code cleaned. And for this formula, I'm going to use upper, which will help us to convert all the text to uppercase. In the bracket, we will key in the coupon code, select the field, and wait for the green tick to appear and click save and finished. So now I have a promo code cleaned in this available fields. Now I'll just drag and drop it and replace the promo code earlier. So now we can see that all the promo code has been capitalized and the Cyber 2021 campaign has been grouped into the same row. That's all for today, and I hope you have learned a lot from this tutorial, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more content. Bye! Hi, welcome back to the tutorial. In today's video, we'll learn about data control in Data Studio. Filters or controls are frequently used in websites for users to be able to find the information they need based on some characteristics selected. This applies to Data Studio as well. So in Data Studio, we can use the date range control to filter the data to a specific date range. To access the control, you can click on this Add a Control button. In today's tutorial, we'll focus on two of the common types of data control in Data Studio. So first, let's start with the drop-down filter. First of all, we have this dashboard that we have been creating. I know it's a little bit messy here, but just bear with me. Maybe it's more cleaner if I move everything down a little bit. And here we can start. So first of all, we're going to add a control, which is over here. There's a button. Just click on it and select drop down list, and similar to how we add a chart, just click on the canvas and you will have this filter in this report, and Data Studio will select the random field for your data control. So what you're going to do next is to define this control field. In this example, we're going to pick country, which is the delivery country. So just drag and drop it into the control field. Next, you can also resize this filter by dragging the edge, just like how you resize the charts in Data Studio. So since November last year, Data Studio has made a big improvement on Data Studio interactivity in edit mode. So now you can select the filter even in edit mode. So when I click on this delivery country filter, I can see all the options here. So let's say I want to see only US in this dashboard. I can just click on this only button over here, and all the charts will be filtered based on that. You can also select more than one country from the drop down. Say for example, we can select Canada. So to select more than one country from the drop-down, we will have to select using the tick at the front of the values. Whereas if you just want to have one value being selected, just click on this only button. By default, you are allowed to select multiple values from the drop-down filter. So to configure setting to allow single select only, you can go to this property panel at the Style tab. Under the control section, there's one single select over here. We can just click on this. Now when we try to select US, you can see that we no longer see the only button shows up when we hover on it. And now we can only select one country. Say if I select United States, and if I want to select Canada now, so the previous value will be cancelled automatically when you select the next one. So that's how we use the single select. But for this dashboard, I want to keep it as multiple select, so I'm just going to untick the single select. Moving on, we can also customize this filter control. Earlier when we click on these filters, it shows the delivery countries along with the numeric numbers at the right to represent the total transaction IDs. So this can come handy if you want to sort the control values with the metric. Say for example, if you don't want to use transaction ID to sort the countries, you can use total customers to sort the delivery country. So for now, let's try to change this transaction ID to total customers. So click on the filter and then at the data tab, we're going to look for total customers, which is the buyer. Drag it to the metric. And we can now see that now the matrix has changed to buyer. We can also change the label over here. It's very similar to how we do it for the charts. Here you go. We have a new label for the matrix. Before we move on, there's also one more trick that I want to share with you. Say for example, if you want to filter to specific country every time when the user browses this dashboard, but you don't want to restrict this to a certain region. Say for example, US is my top country and I always want to filter to US, but I also want to have some flexibility whereas my salespeople can see the sales from Canada and UK and so on. So what I can do is I can go to this control field and I can type in United States. So now we already set a default value to this delivery country filter. And when I click on it, I can still filter to other country or select more than one country if I want. So that's how we can utilize. I find it very useful in the business reporting. So this is just some tips, but for now, for my dashboard, I want to remove it. And because I don't need a default selection. And for the metric, I will also want to remove it because I don't think I would need that. So this is how it looks like after I remove the metric. Next, we will learn one of the most commonly used control in Data Studio, which is date range control. So to add a date range control, we can go to the same button, and at the lower part, select the date range control and click to add. So now we already have a date range control filter. This control gives the viewer a way to change the time frame of a report, so it allows your users to focus on a specific time frame that is important to them. Say for example, marketing folks may want to look at the report for the dates that they organize a campaign and 7 days before the campaign date starts. So having that functionality makes your dashboard more interactive and versatile to adapt to different use cases across the organization. Next, in the property panel, we can set the default date range. For now, it's set to auto date range by default, which includes the entire date range in your data set. You can also customize the date range by clicking on the drop down, and from the calendar you can use the top right drop down to select the date range that you want to set as default. So here are some of the options that we have. We can fix it to a specific date range, or we can set it to a rolling last 7 days, last 14 days, 28 days, 30 days, and there are many more options here that can cater for your use case. Say for example, I can choose to have this month to date, and after I select it, you can see there's one tick over here that allows you to tick whether you want to include today's data or you want to exclude. So that's one option that you can set. After you have done with that, you can just click apply and it will be applied to the charts in the report. And that's all for creating the date range control. But before we call it a day, I want to mention a very important concept for the report date range, which I don't find many tutorials that talks about this on YouTube. So this is very crucial to understand if you have more than one date range in your data set. So if you notice, for every chart we create earlier, or even the filter control that we created, there is one date range dimension attached with every element. So this date range dimension will be always under the data tab and under the section of date range dimension within the data source. So this date range dimension actually governs the time frame of the selected charts. So let me give you an example here. So let's imagine we are a data studio machine, okay? The users tell us we need to create a chart with sales date and the metric sales revenue. So this chart can be filtered by this date range filter over here. But in Data Studio, this date range filter doesn't attach to any field. So if there's no field attached to this filter, how do we know that which field we're going to use to filter the data for this chart when the user select this? So how Data Studio going to work is they're going to find out what date range you have set for this chart. For example, for this time series chart, you have set the date range dimension to sales date. So when the user select month to date data, Data Studio will understand that that refers to the sales we have from 1st February to 25th February. So if date range dimension change to date paid, the meaning changes. That means we want Data Studio to pull us the sales revenue that's been transacted or paid within 1st February and 25th February. And in some scenario, the sales date and the date that people make the payment can be different. So the sales revenue you're getting will be different as well. So that's one very important concept that you have to understand. In summary, you can put different date range fields in different charts. Data Studio supports this function really well without much work needed from the developer, so it's a good thing. On the other side, you will also need to take note because maintaining this date range dimension in so many charts, it's a bit troublesome, I would say. So if you like today's tutorial or you have learned something new, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Hi, today we'll be doing some cosmetic work for our dashboard. In other words, we'll make the dashboard look pretty and pleasing to our eyes. With that being said, this episode is mainly about how to rearrange our charts and elements together efficiently and customize it to match our brands. I'm sorry if my voiceover doesn't match with what's in the screen. Today's episode, I'll be doing the full voiceover for this entire video. So first of all, I know you have been tolerating with this messy canvas since the first episodes. Now it's finally time for us to rearrange the elements properly. So without further ado, let's get started. First, we'll be moving the filters and scorecards to the top. Also, I'm duplicating the filter and adding a few more filters that's needed in this dashboard. To select multiple elements in Data Studio, you can either press Command or Control and then click on the elements one by one, or you can simply highlight the entire area with your cursor. Then you can move the entire group of elements together, or you can resize them together. Next, we'll make sure all the control filters are aligned properly. So what we'll do is to highlight the entire group and choose align vertical and select top. So this will move all the elements to the top and align them in one single line. And to make sure the dashboard looks neat, you also want to make sure the distance between the filters are actually equal. So what we'll do is to distribute horizontally. Next, we'll be adding a report title on top of this canvas, and I'll also be adding a small description under this title. Also, if you have noticed, in our demo dashboard, we actually have a small icon on top. So now we will be going to flaticon.com to download the icon. Once you are there, just search for home, and here we have a wide selection of icons for you to choose, and just simply select one and download it to your desktop. Then go back to Data Studio, and we're going to import this by uploading from our computer, and just select the file that you have downloaded earlier, and here you go, we have an icon inserted in our dashboard. Now you can move it to the location you want, and we'll just adjust the title to the right a little bit. Finally, don't forget to give attribution to the author by adding the URL link to Flaticon. Next, we'll add some shapes to group some of the elements together visually. Then I continue to rearrange all of the charts below. I'm also changing the size of the canvas since this canvas can't fit all of the charts we have here. Next, I also took some time to modify the time series chart because I think it's lacking one of the column as the bar. So I'm adding that in and configure some of the settings here. And we'll also be adding some chart titles to explain and make sure the messaging is clear for our audience, what is represented by the chart. Next, we'll work on customizing theme colors for the report. Before we start, we will need a color palette. For demonstration purposes, I have got one color palette that I'll be using for this course. If you like the same theme colors that I'm showing on the right hand side of this screen, I will attach the hex code in the description below so you can follow along. Otherwise, you can go to my Pinterest account to look for more options for the color palette. I have one board for that specifically. So once we have got the theme colors ready, we will go to Data Studio and click Theme and Layout menu in the toolbar on top. Once you click that, we will see two tabs in the Property panel. For customizing theme colors, we'll be using the Theme Settings. Under the Theme tab, you can see that the theme that applies to our report, which is the default one. If you wish, you can choose the other theme options such as Age, Constellation, Groovy, and many more. There's also an option for you to extract theme colors based on the image that you have uploaded and have that color applied to your report. However, I prefer to just customize the theme color based on the colors that I have selected instead of randomly picked up from the image. So to do that, we'll click on the Customize button on top and we'll be brought to the Edit Theme window. Here we have the options to change the report background color, the text style and format, the component background and border. Note that these changes applies to the entire report. Say if I show you an example here to change the component background to orange color, you can see that all the elements
background would be modified instantly. This is a convenient function if you wish to change the styling at the report level. So we'll keep all those at default and move on to the data style section. Under this section, you will see the chart palette with the default colors. Now we will start to customize the theme color by changing each color here using the hex code. To do that, click on the color box, then scroll to the bottom to access the colors. Then we will click on the Add button under Custom Colors. Then we'll key in the hex code and hit Done. You can continue doing the rest on your own, but I'll fast forward this part since it's repetitive. You can see now all the chart's color has changed based on the brand colors that we have customized. Now when I look at this dashboard, I realize that the filter background color is transparent, so it doesn't look very nice. So I want to standardize all the components to have white background. So what I can do is to go to the theme, and under the component background and border, we will change the background color to white. So here is how it looks like after we have applied the changes, and now you can edit and rearrange the chart so it looks aligned and clean. One tip here, if you want to move the charts using the arrow keys on your keyboard, is to make the grid size smaller so that it's easier for us to adjust. Next, we'll be learning how to override the report theme colors. For instance, now all the charts are following the same theme colors, but sometimes we may have specific colors we want to apply for certain charts only. In that case, we can override the report theme by editing the individual start style settings. In our example, we will change the scorecard color from the white color to blue. We can also change the border radius to 10 if you want the edges to look a bit rounded. So that's all about this episode. In the next chapter, we'll be learning how you could share this beautiful report with your colleagues and stakeholders. So stay tuned and see you next time. Bye bye. Hi, welcome back. In today's episode, we'll be learning how to download and share the report that you have just created in the previous lesson. So there are multiple ways you can share the report in Data Studio. First of all, the easiest way would be to click on this share button, and then you can add the emails of the people that you want to share to. For example, you can type in a few names over here. So I will just type in my email and a fake one. So once you're done with the email, if you want to enter the second one, just hit return button on your keyboard so that you can enter the next one. Or you can use a comma in between of the emails. So that's about how to enter the emails. And then at the bottom here, you will have to indicate what access level you want to grant to these people. So here, if we click on the drop down, you can see there are two options here. One is the edit access, another one is the view access. So here, once we grant the edit access, the person will get the view access and edit access at the same time. For users, usually we will just grant the view access. Next, we can also indicate whether we want to notify the people that the access has been granted or not by clicking on this notify people. Now that it has been checked, that means when we click send, these people will receive an email from Google Data Studio that the access has been granted. So now let's go ahead and click send. And then when we click on share and go to manage access, we can see that this new Gmail has been granted the view access to this dashboard. So this is the first method where we grant the access using their email addresses. However, there are also times you will want the report to be open to the public or at least open to your coworkers under the same organization. So in that case, we can explore the link sharing option here, which is under the Manage Access tab. And then here we can see that the default one, which is set to off link sharing access, and only specific people can access this dashboard if we grant the access to them using their email addresses. So now let's explore more. Here we can see that there are multiple options here, such as anyone in the internet can find and view, anyone on the internet can find and edit, same as anyone with the link can view or anyone in the link with the link can edit. If we are using a company Gmail account to create this dashboard, you will see another two option, which is anyone within the company name can view or anyone within the company name can edit. So that's what we don't get when we're using the personal email. So now let's say you want to open it to the public, which is anyone on the internet can find and view. We can click on that, and then at the bottom here, say if we want to restrict the people, like the viewers, from downloading or printing or copying this entire report, we can click on this disable downloading, printing, and copying for viewers. And also, this is a precaution method if you are sharing something that you don't want people to make a duplication of. And then for editors, we also have some restrictions method here, which is to prevent them from changing the access or adding new people to the report. Because in Data Studio, the editors can add in more people as a viewers or as an editors to this report. So if you want to prevent that as the data control policy, you can also check on this option here. So right now, once we have set the settings, we can click Save and Close. So the advantage of sharing the report via the tool approach that we just shared to you is that people will get the updated data in your report. So there's no need to share a static file using emails or chat messages. While it's good to maintain a most updated report like dashboard, but there are some times that we want to only share a static report to our stakeholders. So in that case, we can explore the download options in Data Studio. So if you want to send a one-off report, you can go to this file menu and then download as, click on the PDF. Here we can see there's more options, which is kind of new to me because previously when I downloaded the report, it was just downloading straight away. But here we have more options like ignore custom background color, okay, add a link back to the report, and password protect report. Seems like we can use a password protect report to protect this report from if there's any sensitive data that included in the report. So let's explore this option, add a link back to the report, and password protect report. So for example, we can just key in the Danalyser. And I just click download. Now it's at the preparing PDF. And it's still progressing. I'm not really sure how long it will take. Okay, it's done. So show in Finder. So now when I try to open the PDF just now, it will show us that this document is password protected, so we have to key in the password just now. So if not mistaken, it's the Danalyser, and I just hit enter. Okay, so now we get to see the entire dashboard. I'm not sure why, like here there's some shadow over here. Okay, I guess if you want to get rid of the shadow here, we have to set it to no border shadow in our reports. So maybe we just try it again. Let's go back and download as PDF. This time we select this tool option. Hit in the password again. And this time we got our dashboard here. So here is what you will get if you click the download as PDF option. I don't really see there is any link back to the dashboard itself, even though we have clicked that option. Yeah, that's kind of weird, but I believe this is a great option if you just want to send a one-off report. But some may ask, what if we need to send this report on a recurring basis? For example, we may need to send this every week to our client. So in that case, we can explore schedule report in Data Studio. In Data Studio, we can schedule emails of this report to our clients on a schedule. So in that case, we will click on this drop down button next to this share button. Click on this and you can see there's one schedule email delivery option. Just click on this and here you can see that we can add some additional recipients such as 𝐬𝐮𝐩𝐻𝐭, and then we can choose to customize the subject and the message in our email address. So for example, I can see this is a sales dashboard report from company Danalyser. Okay, and then hi.
Mr. Lin, kindly refer to the attached weekly report below. Regards, the Danalyser.
Okay, so we have written a message over here. And then we can state the start time. When do we want the schedule to start sending reports? So the default is tomorrow, and then it will be following your local time. And here we can select what time we want this to be sent. Say I want this to be sent at 9 o'clock in the morning every day. So here I can set daily, or you can explore more options like weekly on Saturday, monthly on the second Saturday, every weekday, or you can choose the custom option where we can say we want to send this every 1 week. So for example, if we want to send this every Monday, we can choose the report to be sent on Monday only. But if let's say I want to do an example here for now, I'll just choose daily. I will just choose now the today's date and the schedule within 30 minutes. Once I've done this, I can click schedule. And here you can see that we have a schedule here. If we click back here, we can see what is the settings that has been set. Over here, you can click edit schedule if you want to make any changes to the schedule. And here there's a little 3 dots here, vertical dots, that you can choose if you want to delete the schedule. So here are some basic settings that you have to know if you want to utilize this email delivery feature in Data Studio. So I'll wait for a while and I'll get you to the email that we have scheduled. But for now, I want to share you a report that I have been scheduled for myself, which is this goal tracker over here. You can see that every day I'll be sending this tracker to my own email address, and this is the description I have written in the message. And then here is a screenshot of the report that I'm sending back to myself. And then at the bottom, we can get a PDF documents of this report. Okay, so this is the report that we have scheduled to my email just now. So you can see the title of this dashboard, and you can also see the body of this email that we have just customized in the settings earlier. And when you scroll down, you can see a screenshot of our dashboard. And similarly, at the bottom, we can see there's a PDF file attached. So here is how it looks like if you use the email delivery schedule in Data Studio. So that's pretty much it, but I want to go back to the email delivery just now because I missed out something. So when you see that just now we don't have 2 pages, right? We only have 1 page. So right now I added 1 more page and I name it as test. So when we have multiple page, if you go to email delivery schedule and you click on edit here, you can see that under there's 1 more pages option here that you can select all pages, or you can just select a selected page that you want to show to your clients within the PDF. So right now we can choose sales dashboard and click save to update it. So that's all that I want to cover for today. With that, we have officially come to the end of this course. I really hope that you enjoyed this series of courses. If you would like to help me out, I would like to invite you to do a little bit of survey in the description below, and from there I'll be able to improve further and offer better tutorials for you guys. And that's all. Thank you so much for staying with me, and see you next time. Bye bye.